Beavers look to bounce back in the desert. A tough game at Arizona State coming off the bye week, and we will get you ready for it tonight on #Beavers Football. Thanks for joining us on this Friday night. I'm Katie Brown, along with Slade Norris and Tim Ewis, our superheroes on the show tonight. Guys, I love the shirts. What's this all about?
You know, Katie, OSU Beaver Store, right across from Gill Coliseum. They hooked us up. They're one of our lead sponsors now. We're going Superman, Captain America. My kids picked the shirts out. They love them.
Any tie to the Beavers here?
You know, predict a superhuman effort down there this weekend.
A superhuman effort. But I will say this, nobody has to wear the Superman shirt. They just got to play Beaver football.
There we go.
They just got to stick to what they do, right? Yes, well, it is going to be a hard-fought game tomorrow night, and we want to hear from you tonight. Text us, tweet us, email us, send us your questions. I already have a few coming in, and we will get to as many as we can over the course of the next hour. It is the opening drive as we get the show started, and, of course, talking about coming off the bye week, that we're not even going to talk about that last game way in the past. Feels like a long time ago, and the Beavers looking for a chance to get their season back on track. Arizona State coming off a tough game against Utah last weekend. We'll talk about what Utah did that almost worked against the Sun Devils. And Steve Priest will be up later in the show to tell us the person who must have a big game for a win tomorrow. All right, let's get right to the social media. We get to a tweet from Travis Rice, you guys, who asked, why is Chris Brown not getting a chance to run the football? Obviously looking to get the run game going here. Teron Ward has had some big runs recently, and he had a big game against Arizona State last year. But what about Chris Brown? Why isn't he getting the ball more?
You know, Katie, the Beavers running the football averaged over 7 yards a carry against USC and Stanford combined if you take away the sacks, those negative yardage plays. And so, you know, Teron Ward and Storm Woods have really got the job done. Chris Brown kind of brings a little flash. He brings some excitement to it. He's kind of a big play, quick hit guy. He's a much better G-type scheme runner. Teron Ward's really running the draw well, Slade.
I really don't see our problems with the run game being with the running backs. I feel like they've done a great job. They just haven't had the holes to go through and have success there. So, I mean, Chris Brown coming in, I don't think that would change much from what we already have right now.
The tough thing for a guy like Chris Brown stepping up is going to be the pass protection, because as you know, a running back blocking a D-end like you and what they're asked to do, that's tough to step up as a youngster and really contribute in that area of the game.
And that was a good point you made, because the rushing yards a little bit deceiving when you have a bunch of sacks that are taken away from those numbers. And in fact, there was one drive against USC where it was like they were just running, and I was like, wow, we look like a run team. This is looking pretty good. So they have been running the ball more effectively, at least, even though maybe you can't tell on the scoreboard if the game hasn't gone as we would like.
You know, they have, Katie, especially the draw game. They've got that going. And part of that is USC and Stanford both kind of depended on their upfield 3 or 4 man rush. And then, Slade, you know, playing linebacker and playing D-end, once those linebackers are dropping, it's easy for a guard, a center, a tight end to go and get up on them and start climbing. You know, that's the terminology they use, Katie, is they're going to climb on a linebacker. And when they're not blitzing, it's easy to get those draw schemes going.
Oh, definitely. As a linebacker, what are you weighing in college? Around 220, 230? And these guys are coming at you at 300, 315. If you don't have a full head of steam coming at them, if you're sitting back there on your heels kind of thinking it's pass, I mean, you're in trouble from the start there. So you make a great point.
Yeah.
All right, I love it already. Coming off the bye week, Beaver fans, they have their coaching hats on. They're ready to bring it tonight, and they want to know, why aren't we doing this? Why don't we do that? So this next tweet comes in from Steve Berry, who asks, why haven't the Beavers used the fly sweep or fly sweep motion much until the second half of recent games? Keep them guessing.
You know, I think with the fly sweep, especially getting Brandon Cooks involved with that is very important to get number 7 the ball, however we do it, on fly sweep, on screens, on deep field, you know, deep balls, on the crossing routes. But in the fly sweep in particular, getting a guy like Brandon the ball in space has been big. He's led the team in rushing a couple games this year, which has been crucial. And what it does is it draws the defense. It really makes that safety play down, Slade. And you've been part of those, preparing for those schemes. The safety has to account for it. A linebacker, somebody has to account for it. How does that adjust your game as a defensive end?
With us, it's really hard because when you're seeing all those motions come across, and you know Brandon Cooks is a guy that you have to key on, you have to stop him to stop Oregon State. As a DN, you just got to get upfield and make sure either if your key is to cut him off or your key is to go inside and make sure the handoff, it's whatever your game plan is. But it makes it difficult because of all the indecision there. So with coming across, it's really a play, though, that it has to be built up from the beginning. They have to establish the run. They've established certain things before that fly sweep's going to work. So I think for the past couple of games, that's the reason why we've maybe waited a little bit in order to get that in.
Now, I know you're a film guy. Well, you both are. But I know, Tim, you go in there and you dissect all the plays. I mean, not that you would ever doubt Mike Riley or the play calling, but do you see areas where the Beavers could be taking advantage of it a little bit earlier than they are?
Well, I think Coach Riley even admitted after the USC game, we got to get the ball into Brandon's hands, and we have to allow him to make plays. That's a playmaker, and when you have that guy, you put the ball in his hands and you roll the dice and you see what happens. And I think, from the coach's perspective, he understands that going down to Arizona State, he needs to get Brandon touches just to see what he can do when he has his hands on the football.
And definitely in the fly sweep, and I really believe they need to get the run game started. With the way that Arizona State's built, they have the #1 pass defense in the Pac-12, and they're #1 in sacks.
Oh, you're scaring me talking like that, Slade.
We can't just sit back and throw the ball every time against these guys. We'll play right into their hands. So this run game really, I think, is going to be huge for us.
All right. Travis and Steve already bringing it with their tweets and questioning the game planning, what we need to do. Obviously, after a couple of tough losses to Stanford and USC, there are a lot of people talking about what can Oregon State do and how to, because it doesn't get any easier. Of course, at Arizona State, tomorrow is going to be an interesting matchup given that the Sun Devils are undefeated at home. Oregon State is undefeated on the road, so something's going to have to give tomorrow. And then, of course, it's back home against Washington. Tough home game. And then the Civil War. So 3 tough weeks for them in the regular season. And right now where they're sitting, they're still in that territory where they could have a special bowl game if things go their way and they play their best.
Yeah, they really can, Katie. And Mike Parker's always called it the murderer's row in reference to the Yankees from back in the day. And this is a tough 3-game stretch. But I think, Slade just talked about them being #1 in sacks in the Pac-12 and leading in several statistical categories on defense. We just looked at a play of Brandon Cooks running that screen game. That's a great way to stop the rush. Get the screen game to a speedy wide receiver like that going. And so if whatever you can do to stop that rush, get that defense on its heels, and then get the run game going. And once they're on their heels, even if they want to blitz, they kind of got to do it off their heels and open up some gaps, Slade.
And what's great is Coach Riley and his staff had an extra week to sort of pick at those things. How can we switch this up enough to make it look different to this team? How can we have success? I love coming off a bye week.
All right, we are just getting started. There's, of course, plenty to talk about coming off the bye week, and with a huge road game tomorrow at Arizona State. Steve Priest will bring his insight later on the show, and we will be back with much more. Send in your texts and tweets. We'll be back on #Beavers Football coming up next on Comcast Sportsnet. We're glad you're with us on this Friday night as we get ready for the Beavers road game at Arizona State tomorrow night, and we want you to join us on the show by sending in your texts, tweets, your emails. Hey, you can come down and join us live at Blitz Lad and ask your question, but send in your questions. These guys are ready to bring it after having a bye week, and the Beavers facing a really huge game on the road tomorrow night. All right, we do have a guest who decided to come down, hang out with us live here at Blitz Lad, and that is Brandon from Milwaukee. Brandon, what's your question?
I wanted to key in on the fact that last 2 weeks we haven't had great offense. I think people are noticing that we can't run the ball. We're going pure to the pass. What are we going to do in the Arizona State game to kind of match their offensive explosion that we know that they're going to bring?
That's a good question. I do love the shirt. Give a hoot. Don't pollute. I'm all about that. So I got to respect a good T-shirt when I see one. But to match their offensive explosion, 515 yards a game up until that Utah game, Slade, that's a huge number to come back from and to really work towards scoring that amount of points. And so what the Beavers have to do is score in the red zone. They have to score touchdowns, and they have to hold Arizona State to field goals. Specifically, what can they do? They get the ball in the hands of Brandon Cooks. and get him rolling.
It'll be interesting to see since the teams combined for more than 960 yards of offense tomorrow night. All right, we're going to be back in just a moment to answer more of your texts and tweets on hashtag Beavers Football. It is your pregame show, hashtag Beavers Football, the night before when it's really our pep rally show where you get to call the shots, send in your texts and tweets, and Slade and Tim will give them their best shot. They have all the answers, so we want to hear from you as we head into second down, and we'll take more social media. We'll start talking a little more about Arizona State. I have to mention first, love the new look, Tim. Going a little Ron Burgundy look on us.
Well, I had to go with the mustache for Movember, Katie.
Oh, I gotcha.
And
okay.
I actually tweeted out a picture of 3 classic television mustaches, and I threw myself into the mix with, Burt Reynolds and Tom Selleck.
Wow, Burt Reynolds, Tom Selleck. Wow.
I feel confident that this stash gets it done for Beaver Nation.
Very nice. Let's hope so. Okay, let's get to a tweet now. Megan Harper writes in, 3 tough games coming up in a row. How does the team prepare? Keep them all in mind, or really just nothing in capital letters, nothing beyond this week?
I did a podcast this week with Comcast Sports Northwest, and on it, it was shocking when I gave my answer to the similar question that is a player, I took it one game at a time. I often didn't know who we were playing the following week.
Oh, come on, really?
I kid you not, Katie. In the NFL even, I didn't know who was on the schedule next because you're so dialed in to learning every little detail about your current opponent. So those guys are focused in. I mean, they probably know that they have Washington and then Oregon coming up, but
okay, they have to know they have Oregon. Let's get real.
They're not looking at that film. They're not paying attention to it. They're dialing in on Arizona State and all the little details of how they can improve. Did you approach a game a similar way, Slade?
Exactly the same. Same thing. Sometimes would forget, who do we have next week? Just because you are so dialed in. And Coach Riley, he teaches, and I was spoken about this earlier in the previous show, is that each week is a small season, a little microcosm of a season, and it has its own phases and such, but their focus completely is on this week, and they know that because there's a lot riding on this week for both teams. So there's no way to overlook a team like Arizona State, and Coach Riley won't let it happen.
At this point in the season, every game is so important, Katie, that you just focus in, you dial in, and you know what's on the line. For Arizona State, it's essentially a Southern Pac-12 championship every game they play. For us, it could be a share of the Northern Championship for every game we play.
That is still in the realm of possibilities, of course. And yes, Arizona State in first place right now with just one loss to Stanford in conference play so far. So they control their own destiny if they continue to win. But last week, it was a close call against Utah, and there were definitely lessons to be learned for the Beavers from that game. What do you think they took away that Utah did so well, but just didn't quite finish off to hold Arizona State down?
What'd you see, Slade?
With Arizona State, you've got to limit the running backs, and you got to make sure Kelly isn't running the ball over you. If you can do those two things, their running backs account for a ton of their receiving yards too, not just running up the middle, but they're out there. I think Grice has around 6 receiving touchdowns, and Foster has a couple too. If you can limit that, which they did in the beginning of the game, and then it kind of got away from them more towards the end.
They love that action of motioning Foster out of the backfield, creating a 4-man side,
overloading,
really getting a chance to have Kelly make a play in the run game, or Grice, or swing it out to Foster on the pass and get good blocking on the outside. So there's a lot of weapons in that offense, Katie. But what I saw, Slade, was 3rd and long. If the Beavers can keep Arizona State in 3rd and long and make Kelly make a play downfield, when you limit that zone read spread style offense playbook, man, you get to 3rd and long. There's only like 12 plays in that playbook anyways, and there's only 3 you can run in 3rd and long. So I think that's the key to the game for the Beavers defense, Slade.
You brought up Grice. What does he do so well or how can the Beavers slow him down?
He works that offense really well. With that spread offense, he hits holes quickly. He's an aggressive running back, and he gets upfield fast. So what we really have to do is make sure that all their motions, all the stuff they do before the snap, don't get us out of alignment. Don't freak us out there. We know our assignments. We know the holes we have to be in. If we can do that, then we can stop him.
And that's exactly right. When you see guys motion on the backfield, sometimes a player will run with them, a safety will come down. Those are all keys. They have to kind of hold their ground and really stick to their guns from the plays that Coach Baker calls, Katie.
All right, well, of course, they are going to be looking to have Bryce going and scoring, and we have a tweet coming in from Taylor who asks, how do you think we will get Cooks the ball more, because that's the guy we need to get going for the Beavers?
You know, that's a good question, and I think what I've seen and probably what the coaches have seen on film and evaluated is early on in the year, we were hitting all these deep balls. And essentially against USC and Stanford, they said we will not be beat deep. We're not going to let teams take us deep. And so the underneath routes are there, the comebacks, the inside curls, the hooks. I think that's that 10 to 15 yard reception is the area to get Cooks the ball. The crossing routes at 15 to 20 yards. That's the zone that they're allowing us to catch the ball in. And I really believe, even though Arizona State likes to blitz about 50% of the time, I think when they drop to that zone 3 blitz, those guys take off in their drops, and there will be zones in that 15-yard range, Slade.
And also, as you said earlier, that wide receiver screen, because they're blitzing so much, that's going to be huge in getting Cooks the ball, and I think they'll do that a lot this week.
Well, and we've done a great job against heavy blitz teams like Utah, where he got that screen inside. Against Cal, got that screen, took it up the sideline. So great opportunities for Brandon in that screen game.
All right. Well, Taylor, thank you for that tweet, and continue to send in your social media. We will continue to take it throughout the show, and we will try to get to all of them or most of them. A lot more to talk about. And also coming up, Steve Priest with more on Brandon Cooks.
It doesn't matter how well their defense plays. If this team doesn't score 40 points or more, they aren't going to beat an Arizona State team that's put 50 or more on the board 5 times this season.
We come to you live on this Friday night from Blitzlad in Southeast Portland. It is #Beavers Football, your pep rally show as we get ready for the team's road game at Arizona State tomorrow night. A tough matchup. And, of course, coming off the games against Stanford and USC, we have been talking about how the Beavers need to get their offense going. Specifically, how do they get Brandon Cooks going again? And in tonight's Extra Point, Steve Priest breaks down how teams have been trying to take him out and how the Beavers can get him back in.
Oregon State was averaging 45 points a game for the first 7 games of the season. They were 6-1. The last 2 weeks, 12 points against Stanford and 14 against SC. It doesn't matter how well their defense plays. If this team doesn't score 40 points or more, they aren't going to beat an Arizona State team that's put 50 or more on the board 5 times this season, with a great quarterback, a versatile quarterback, and so forth. The only way the Beavers do that is to get Brandon Cooks back in the game down the field. There are a number of ways to do it, but you've got to fight with the teams that are going to use a double cover all the time on Brandon Cooks, that are going to absolutely try to stop Mannion to Cooks, and anybody else that beats you is fine. The Beavers have got to remedy that by making some of those other people beat you until you relax on Brandon Cooks. Let's take a look at a couple of examples from last week's games, and we'll see how this happened. Take a look at the first set here. This is very much a pro set. SC is in a 4-man line, typical pro defense. And look, down the field here, you've got Brandon Cooks, you've got a corner in his face so they can't throw to him quickly, and deep, you've got somebody helping out. So he can't get the ball quickly to run with it, and he's got to go deep where he's got another person to beat him. The ideal thing here is to get other people out short, forcing this to come off quickly. Watch the offensive line play. First play of the game, Beavers. Let's take a look and see what happened. Good fake there. The backs go through. Excellent coverage. And look at this throw. Brandon Cooks is a great route runner. He puts the ball right where Cooks can catch it. Big first down on the first play of the game, 37 yards. Now we go down the ways a little bit in the first quarter. This is a double set. That's a Y, and this is a Y, and that's a running back. Take a look here, and let's see what forces Sean Mannion to come out of Brandon Cooks right here. This is a situation where the ball snapped. He doesn't have any time. He has to unload quickly to a running back going away from the downfield. The running back has to catch the ball. He has to catch it in a position to gain some yards. It's either the screen, use Teron Ward, Storm Woods, get him down the field. If you get him down the field, those backs that are doubling up have to come up. Those linebackers that are doubling have to come up. That leaves Brandon Cooks, Richard Mullaney, and those tight ends in the intermediate areas or deep, and the Beavers put points on the board. This is another situation. This is exactly like the first play of the game. We're still in the first quarter, folks, but let's take a look. Here's Cooks. There's your double. Every single play you're going to see that the rest of the season. Here's a tight end, and here's Mullaney. He's just in a little open position. He's not even particularly outside. But watch this play. Same one we saw on the first play. There's the fake. Again, plenty of time. Sean Mannion unloads quickly. That's a touchdown that's missed because Sean could feel the pressure that had been coming from that pass rush. And last but not least, we'll see real pressure. Out of the last shot we're going to watch is Mannion taking a snap, dropping back, and a four-man pass rush gets to him and ends his opportunity to get downfield. Let's watch. Outside linebacker, they beat 7 Beavers with 4 pass rushers there. If the Beavers are going to score a lot of points, and they're going to have to score a lot of points to win, they've got to get the ball down the field. The only way to get it down the field is to get Brandon Cooks back in the game. You can't get him back in the game until you force other people to be covered, and that means throwing quickly, getting it out to the other players, and getting them going downfield for yardage so they keep the change moving. That's my extra point for the week. A whole bunch of extra points. It'll take 40 to win this football game.
Middle. Are we going?
And a high-scoring game, definitely a possibility tomorrow, given the way that these offenses can explode. Oregon State has shown that it can do that, but obviously getting Cooks going is a big key there. All right, well, we have a tweet coming in, and this name is going to sound awfully familiar. I covered this guy from way back in high school, but Brady Camp writes in, and Tim, he says, why is the rush game lacking this year? The tight ends need to step it up in the blocking to get our rush going, and he, better than anybody, would know.
You know what? I'm not going to call a spade, but Brady Camp sure will, because that was one heck of a blocking tight end, and Slate battled against him on about a daily basis. And the thing I love about Brady is he's evaluating the game from the player perspective, and he's looking at what those tight ends can do better. And I'm going to agree with him to a certain extent, especially in that G scheme play, Katie, where the tight end's in a one-on-one block, and you have some faction of the guard, tackle, and center pulling around. In the onus, we called it, was on the tight end. And Slade, how do you prepare going against a tight end in that G scheme?
It's always, you got to win the hand battle. You have to control the player with your hands inside. And your coach Sam Hall worked that so much back at Oregon State as a DN, down with your hands inside. Once you grab that steering wheel, then you're able to get them like that. So I'd say,
I had those guys worked out as well on you.
Yeah. Well, I got to say to Howard real fast, I'm sorry to Brady. Howard and Reese, I'm sorry, but Brady was the only guy that actually could block me on our team there my senior year. So Brady was a tough guy to get by, so he does know all about this.
BC was a good blocker, and he does know that those guys need to step it up. And that's been a traditional play at Oregon State, to run that G scheme. All the great running backs have had great success running it, and I think that has been Storm Wood's good play last year, and it should be better this year, and it hasn't been.
All right, talking about the tight ends specifically, though, Connor Hamlet, Caleb Smith, banged up a little bit, and then we get the bye week and people get a chance to get healthy. So what is the status going into tomorrow at Arizona State?
Connor looks healthy. He's been able to practice all week, and obviously he was probably 80% last game, and you saw that especially in that red zone play where Sean threw an interception. Connor did not look 100%. Normally I think he goes up and battles for that ball and makes a play. Caleb Smith kind of had some back issues, and I think he is 100% as well, ready to go. And that changes what you can do in that offense. Not just in the 2-minute drill, Katie, but in the offense as a whole, where you're asking those guys to block, you're asking them to run and catch passes, and those two do it better than the other guys. That's why they were number 1 and 2 on the depth chart. Absolutely.
Tight end's so important to what Oregon State does, and so you need those guys at their best. Okay, we are going to go we have a text coming in from Nick. One of my favorite ones. It says, liking the Movember stash, Tim. I hope it means good luck for the Beavers against ASU. Go Beavs.
I hope it means good luck against ASU as well. And I think there's some guys on the team rocking the stash. You know, some people do no shave November. I've done that in the past. I just wanted to rock the Movember this year and give that little props. And you know what? I'm trying to figure out. I put that picture on Twitter, Katie, and then maybe they'll pop that up later in the show. You know, might keep it bushy, might shave it. I don't know. Maybe that's one of those dislike things on Twitter. The favorite.
I think we need to grow it out and get some wax in there. Maybe we'll see what happens.
Get the handlebars going.
Now you're getting crazy. Okay. All right. Well, when we come back, we have a tweet that's come in about the postseason and really looking ahead in the season. So we will address that. But send in your text, tweets, and emails as we continue to get to them on hashtag Beavers Football only on Comcast Sportsnet. We are heading into third down on the big pep rally show. So thanks for being with us on this Friday night. We are going to we're going to check in with Ryan in just a moment, who tweeted in asking about bowl situations, which we'll get to. Send in your texts or tweets or emails so we can answer them. Slade and Tim will take them on. But right now, our favorite way to join the show is just to come join us live down here at Blitz Lab. And that's what Rena has done. So Rena, what's your question?
So it's the Beavers' first losing streak. How do you expect them to bounce back after the bye week?
Good question.
It is. You know, once you get a losing streak going on, especially mid-season, when you're beat up, you're tired, you know, things aren't going your way, the best thing that can happen to you is a bye week. The team has enough time to go through, refocus. The coaches have some time to go, look, what didn't work this past 2 weeks? What did they do to us that we couldn't handle? And you can move forward from there. So with the way that this happens, if I were the player, I'd go off this last week. I'd take a few days off, just get away from football. Relax your mind, just, you know, decompress, and then get back there, hit the film hard, and get ready for your week. That's what I think they should do.
Yeah, I think that's the strategy going into it, Slade, is take that time off, let the coaches regroup, see what worked well, see what didn't work well. And that's where I think this staff is at its best, Katie, is when they get a chance to plan, break that film down, put a good game plan together. And so I'd expect them to go down to Arizona State with a great game plan. Number one, to pick the blitz up, where they've had some problems with the rush in the last 2 weeks. I don't think they're going to be overpowered, except by a guy like Sutton at the point of attack compared to, you know, USC and Stanford. But they'll put together a package for that blitz. And then on defense, I think they'll have a great opportunity to put something together for that zone read scheme, and not just for this game, Slade, but for the following 3 weeks, and it'll build on itself 1 week to the next. So that might be a time where you do start looking a few weeks ahead, just because there's 3 zone schemes coming, and so you look at what you can install this week, and you even alluded to some little tricks up Banker's sleeves. So, you know, Coach Banker's got something brewing in the lab, and I think that it might be a chance to implement some of those things.
Well, and one of the offensive players for Arizona State we haven't talked about yet is the quarterback, Taylor Kelly. And now we're getting back to that dual threat quarterback that has sort of just been the thorn in the Beaver side.
You know, he can run the ball, he can pass the ball. His touchdown to interception ratio is off the charts. It's right up there with Sean. So he's done a very good job of slinging it, but also he's not scared to pull it out of that zone read, Slade.
I think he scored about 7 touchdowns just by himself. Those legs are dangerous, but I really, even though he is a dangerous threat and he's a great quarterback, I would still rather have the ball in his hands, stop that running game, get them in that third down situation, because that's when we can play our best. We really, I think, need to focus on stopping those 2 running backs. If we can limit that, I'd much rather have him running around back there than the running back.
So try to force him to keep the ball. Don't let Grimes get it, and then get him in 3rd and long, as we said, and make him actually try to pick apart a defense, which it's really difficult for a zone read quarterback to just sit back in the pocket and pick apart a defense. We saw that with Mariota down at Stanford last week. He really had trouble when he didn't have that scramble ability.
Well, Taylor Kelly has thrown for 24 touchdowns, run for 7 more, so he definitely has been effective. Now, on the other side of the ball, they have a pretty scary guy on defense, scariest in the Pac-12. We haven't talked about him either.
Yeah, Will Sutton. I mean, you got a big man inside, player of the year. You know, it was racking up sacks like nobody's business last year. He's carried a lot of double teams this year, so really hasn't been quite as productive, but had 9 tackles against Utah.
Big interception, too.
Big interception at the end of the game. A D tackle that's over 300 pounds get an interception.
He was too tired, he said, to carry out the play, so he found himself in the right place.
I swear they had to stop by Chick-fil-A and grab some Crisco to get that guy into his jersey. but he, you know what? He made plays, and Slade, you've had those double teams before, so what does that tell you about the respect they carry for that guy on defense?
Oh, every time you get a double team, and that's just a handshake. It's just, we acknowledge you. You're a great player. Good luck, But with my own experience, having a great defensive tackle in the middle, I had Stephen Paella. He was an absolute beast. He would press that pocket and just allow Vic and I to go flying off the edges and make all these sacks because the quarterback couldn't step up. So a big defensive presence in the middle, somebody that can get in the quarterback's face, that can make him feel pressure, feel uncomfortable, is huge for a defense. So that's going to be a big point of emphasis this week. We have to limit what he does in the backfield.
And if you're going to commit to double teaming him every time, I've seen a lot of saw dogs where they bring the Sandman, the Will off the side. They're going to squeeze everything inside, double team him, and try to bring pressure from the outside. I've also seen, the old NCAA blitz, 4 strong and 4 weak. And once again, they're going to have to account for Sutton inside and try to bring pressure off the edges more than up the middle.
Sean has to know his hot reads this week because they're going to come 50% of the time. That's every time. 50% of the time it works every time. And that's when those tight ends are going to come in, the tight ends and running backs. I see a lot of action from them this week, so I really hope those guys are healthy and ready to go.
Yep.
All right, Ryan tweets in. He's looking. We're talking about whether the players look ahead to Washington next week. Ryan's looking way ahead, trying to make his holiday plans. His tweet, he says, "What are the best bowl chances going forward?" And I have to say, and he puts it to you first, Slade. So we'll let you answer first. But I have to say, perfect timing because my husband's a season ticket holder. You're a season ticket holder. Just arrived in the mail today. Was sort of pre-ordering your bowl tickets. It had the full range from the Rose Bowl all the way down, and saw a prediction this week of the Beavers ending up in the Sun Bowl. But I know they've been in Texas a lot, so people would rather go somewhere else. But what are you thinking of these? What Ryan's really asking is what's going to happen these last 3 games?
I like this Ryan guy. He sounds like a smart guy. But it's really hard to project at this point because, we still got a lot of games left, and so many teams are just kind of left in the middle there. So it really, for us, could go anywhere from the Holiday Bowl in nice, sunny San Diego, or we can go all the way down to the New Mexico Bowl. It's hard to project. We have some tough games coming up. If we can get a win this week, that would be huge for our bowl season, because if we win this week, then we're looking good going into that UW game. We got them coming over, and then, Oregon, you always got to throw the rankings out for the Civil War. You never know what's going to happen. So I don't have a crystal ball on me, but, I'm hoping for some sun.
And when I say Texas, we would take the Alamo Bowl. That's a pretty good bowl in the Pac-12.
Yeah, that's a great bowl, Katie. and I have no crystal ball. I'd love to book some plane tickets and figure out where I'm taking my family for the holidays. But as it sits right now, we have to wait and really see how the Beavers perform and see how the rest of the Pac-12 performs. That, you look at the UCLA, UW game tonight. Well, people had UW practically going to the Rose Bowl at the beginning of the season, and they've really kind of fallen off and taken a step down. So it's really finishing strong in these last 3 games of the year.
I think I know what your answer is going to be, but to both of you, what is your favorite bowl memory from your Beaver days?
My senior year, it was real special for me for 2 different things. Number one, my brother was on the team, and we got to room together down there. We had a great time. It was a great experience. I'll always cherish that. And the second was...
You're saying at the Sun Bowl?
At the Sun Bowl,
yeah. They took great care of us down there.
They did. They do a phenomenal job at that hosting community there. They are fantastic. The best I've been to as far as that category.
Okay, I'm sorry that I knocked the Sun Bowl. It's a great experience, and it would not be a bad thing to end up there.
But also, in that game, we held a good Pittsburgh team with LaShawn McCoy to a goose egg.
That was the defensive battle of
absolutely demolished that team. So it might not have been the most exciting game to watch, but the defensive side, I loved it.
From the booth, there was a lot of anxiety going 3-0. But, Katie, you'd expect this bowl ring and the Fiesta Bowl to be my favorite experience. But honestly, I'll go back to my senior year because those are the guys that you've played with for 5 years at that point. And although I cherish the Fiesta Bowl and what a BCS
because that is my favorite bowl memory.
And I think for much of Beaver Nation it is. I really enjoyed the Las Vegas Bowl my senior year. And Steven Jackson and I and Mike Cass and James Newsom all tore it up and had career days. And after the game, Steve talked about going to the draft, and we had a lot of players drafted. So that was just a special experience that senior year, and it kind of tied the whole career together. But dancing on the field after the Fiesta Bowl was a pretty good experience.
I was just gonna say, no matter what you say, you got to look at that ring and know what you did for Oregon State. I was lucky enough to be at the Fiesta Bowl too, and I will never ever forget that whole week. It was like a dream. All right, I say it's the Fiesta Bowl for Tim, no matter what he says. Okay, we still have more to come, so send in your texts and tweets. We will answer more. Plus, it's what to watch for against Arizona State on #Beavers Football next. It is time for the Standard TV and Appliance What to Watch For at Arizona State tomorrow night. What could make the difference between a Beaver win and a long plane ride home? What are we watching for tomorrow night? Start with you, Slade.
For the defensive side, like I said earlier, take out those running backs coming out of the backfield, whether they're trying to get out. We just got to take away the receiving threat that they pose. If we can take away those first and second downs, get them into the third and long, I think we'll be okay there. They're a tough team. And another thing I didn't say, and I just thought of this, they're first in the red zone right now in the Pac-12. They get that ball into the end zone. If we can get them and limit them to field goals, I definitely think that we'll have a chance to win this game. So
Slade, I
was going to say, funny you should mention that, because if you went to at CSNNW.com,
did I steal yours?
Tim wrote about this today.
I blogged about that today, that 35 and 34 touchdowns respectively, but they outnumber us by 10 in the field goal department. So they kick field goals when they're down there. What we have to do is make them kick more field goals, and we have to keep scoring touchdowns. My key to the game, Katie, is really going to be turnovers. That was in my blog as well. And when you look at the turnover battle, I believe that 3-interception effort by Sean Mannion was an anomaly. That doubled his output for the entire year so far. But if we can win +2 turnovers in the game tomorrow, we will win. Our turnovers have been untimely. They've been in the red zone, backed up, I should say, in the opponent's red zones, and they lead to points. So, number one, we got to limit our turnovers. Number two, we can't give them turnovers where they can convert those to points, Katie.
Yes, the +2, Tim said, and go to CSNNW.com and read his blogs, because he wrote earlier in the week about what it's like to go down and play in the desert at Arizona State, and some reflections, some good thoughts there. Okay, we have a text about Sean Mannion, who we've touched on some, but it says, do you guys expect Sean Mannion to rebound this week? Here's a guy who was in the Heisman conversation a few weeks ago, and a couple of rough weeks and a lot of sacks and some shaken confidence at times. So what happens to him?
Well, you say rough weeks, but he still threw for over 500 yards and almost 600.
All right, well, he was sacked a few times.
I agree.
And he had some turnovers.
Yeah, he was hit a lot. He had 3 turnovers against SC. Against Stanford, he played a very good ball game. He missed a couple, a fade down the sideline to Brandon. I see him rebounding. Number one, he's going to have both his tight ends back. That's going to be a game changer for him. He only had 2 of his really 5 targets last week. So he's going to have a lot more targets back, Slade.
You really said it all there. I think with the bye week, giving him time to sit back and recoup and look at the mistakes he made, I agree, USC was an anomaly.
The time you spent in the film room on a bye week, and Sean was in there with Coach Langsdorff just pouring over the film.
I mean, he's a very cerebral player, and that'll only help us as we go forward. He'll make those changes, and he'll do just fine.
And as we've seen, he's grown so much. I mean, he knows what he can do. He has that overall confidence of what he can do for the Beavers.
He's got the moxie. He's got that X factor. And he's,
like
Slade said, he's cerebral. I like that. He is. He thinks about it. He pours over it. He takes it personal. So I think a lot of times people wonder, is this guy, he just shows up and throws the ball around and kind of, wears the Letterman coat around campus. He's a football guy. He's a gym rat. He takes it personal when he plays poorly. And I know after those 2 losses, he wore those on his sleeve. So I'd expect him to rebound.
Okay, I love the former players just chiming in for hashtag Beavers Football tonight. We have a tweet that is in from James Dockery, who asks, Tim, big challenge for the run defense. If we can win first, second down, we can win the game.
Yeah, and I agree. That's what we've been saying all game. Keep them in third
That's
long,
what Utah
Katie.
did for 3 quarters.
That's exactly what Utah did for 50 minutes of that game. Utah did that exactly what James said, kept them in third and long. And they did that by blitzing a lot. You know, they kept them on their heels, as we said. And they made the quarterback make decisions in the passing game, which limits their playbook, Slade.
You know, I got to say, if you're watching, James, what's up, man? I miss you. It's great to play with you, but I completely agree. And, of course, leave it to James to leave it up to the DBs to win the game there in the third and long. He would want that.
I think James is getting ready for a big game against the Redskins this weekend. No, against Patriots, hosting the Patriots.
Yeah.
Okay, we are going to get to predictions in just a moment, but we do have an email that came in to Ask CSN that says, happy anniversary, Tim. Today is the 10-year anniversary of your 2-touchdown game against Stanford. The day was of small significance to me, too. Brent Wismer.
Brush that off the shoulder there.
Nice. Wiz. No, you know what? That was a fun experience.
Did you wake up this morning thinking
I did not wake up thinking that, but it was my last home game. It was senior day. It was so much fun. I got to be honest. You know, I came across in motion on our first drive down, and Derek caught me in the flat, and they took nobody with me, and I knew I was going to catch a touchdown, and walked in, and the tight ends and I had kind of planned it out, Katie, and this was ill-advised, but I jumped in and did the Reeser Reach, as Mike Parker named it.
Reeser Reach.
Jumped into the end zone at the Valley end and celebrated with the fans. Got a 15-yard penalty, which Coach Riley was not happy about. Only flag of my career, because I never held, Slade.
It was so worth it, wasn't it?
So worth it. And
No
then I
offensive
kept the
players
ball
do.
and tried to give that to a tight end. And then Derek said, no, I want to keep that ball because I felt good throwing it, and I didn't know we were limited in the number of game balls that you can actually play with. So I did get it back after the game, though, and had to buy it because of NCAA rules. So still have that one in the trophy cabinet.
Well, happy 10-year anniversary to you.
10 years since I hung it up at Oregon State. Man.
All right, let's get to the predictions now for tomorrow night. Arizona State, a 14-point favorite at home over Oregon State. I mean, on paper, this is a really tough matchup, but they are coming off the bye week. How's it going to go?
I'm going Oregon State 42, Arizona State 35. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game, but I think we'll make them kick a couple more field goals than we will. I'm changing that. I'm going 28 for Arizona State. We're gonna
you got to mix the field goals.
Yeah,
in there.
31. There we go. All right, 42-31. We're gonna score some touchdowns. They're gonna score some field goals.
For some reason, I'm thinking this is going to be a lower scoring one than everybody's predicting. I'm going to say like 17-21, something like that. I think the defenses will step up in this game, and I think Oregon State's going to surprise people and take this one.
So you see more of a defensive battle.
Yeah.
So then I might go 21-16 if I was you, and make them kick those 2 field goals in the red zone.
I'm with
Like
you.
that.
I think it's going to be lower scoring than people think, too. Kind of like Stanford. A lot of people were, going on, but I think that the defenses are going to decide this one. Oregon State is not afraid of the road. They've shown that this year. That is the one thing. They're undefeated on the road, and they kind of like playing on the road.
I think we can do, Katie, down there what USC did, and everybody thinks they got slammed, but USC scored a lot of points and put up a lot of yards and was very successful. So I think we can win on the road.
Okay, so there you have it for Arizona State.